Okay, let's unpack this for a second
Yeah.
because we all have that mental software running in the background, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, think of worry like a glitchy app. It's just eating up all your mental RAM until your whole system crashes. You try to force quit it, but it just keeps spinning in the background, you know? It drains your battery, freezes up your screen, and makes it basically impossible to focus on the things right in front of you.
Right. It's exhausting.
Totally. So today we're going to install a patch. We are taking a deep dive into Dale Carnegie's foundational work, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And our mission today, we want to extract the most potent, practical strategies for conquering anxiety.
Which is so needed right now.
It really is. We're taking this massive stack of historical anecdotes, psychological insights, business case studies, and we're distilling them into a shortcut for mental resilience, custom tailored for you. Because, I mean, this isn't just about feeling a little lighter, is it? It's about fundamental survival.
It really is. I mean, the goal of our deep dive today isn't just to find ways to, feel better temporarily. We need to understand the underlying mechanics of why worry is so physically destructive and how we can systematically disarm it.
Right.
There's this fascinating observation in the research from Dr. Alexis Carrel. He was a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, and he noted something incredibly stark. He said business people who don't know how to fight worry die young.
Wow. Die young. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's not a joke. Worry isn't just a passing mood. It is a sustained physical assault on your nervous system. It actively leads to ulcers, heart disease, high blood pressure. I mean, your body just isn't designed to stay in a prolonged state of fight or flight.
It just burns out.
Exactly. So our aim today is to break down the mechanics of this destruction and give you the actual practical tools to stop it.
I love that framing, because before we can solve our big, complex life problems, we have to stop the immediate physiological panic, right?
Okay.
We have to contain the blaze first.
Right, put out the fire.
Yeah, if the house is on fire, you don't start worrying about the property taxes, you grab a hose. So how do we isolate the present moment from, the crushing weight of everything we did wrong in the past and everything that might go wrong in the future?
Well, Sir William Osler, he was one of the most highly regarded physicians of his time. He actually came up with a brilliant mental model for this.
Yeah.
He argued that to survive the intense pressures of life, we need to mimic the design of a great ocean liner.
Okay, an ocean liner? How so?
Well, think about it. If a modern ship hits an iceberg or springs a leak, the captain can hit a button and instantly close these watertight bulkheads.
Oh, right. To seal off the water.
Exactly. It isolates different sections of the hull so the whole ship won't sink. And Osler realized we must do the exact same thing with our minds. We have to hit a mental button and shut out the dead yesterdays. The mistakes we can't change and the unborn tomorrows, which are the anxieties that haven't even happened yet.
So just completely wall them off.
Right. We can only function effectively by living in what he called day-tight compartments.
Day-tight compartments. I like that. It makes total sense. You shrink your timeline down to the next 24 hours so you don't drown in overwhelm. But this is a big... But what happens if a disaster does manage to breach your hull today? Like right now, in this present compartment, everything is just going wrong.
Yeah, when you're actively taking on water, that's when you look at a strategy designed by Willis H. Carrier. He's the engineer who basically founded the air conditioning industry.
Oh, nice. We owe that guy a lot.
We really do. But early in his career, he faced a massive business disaster. He had this failing installation that was going to cost his company a devastating amount of money.
Yikes.
Right. But instead of spiraling into a panic attack, he engineered a three-step method he called his magic formula.
Okay, I'm taking notes. What's the formula?
First, he forced himself to answer one question. What is the absolute worst that can happen here? Second, he accepted that worst-case scenario mentally. And third, he calmly devoted his time and energy to improving upon the worst.
Okay, I hear that, but I really have to push back here.
Go for it.
I get the whole accepting the worst thing in theory, right? But if I go into work today and just accept that I might get fired, doesn't that just make me stop trying? Like, it sounds a lot like defeatism to me. If I accept the worst, aren't I just giving up?
I mean, it totally seems like that on the surface. But the psychological mechanism at play is entirely different. It's actually the complete opposite of giving up.
How so?
Think about what happens in your brain when you're terrified of an unknown outcome. Your mind is just trapped in this relentless cycle of vague imaginings. The amygdala, your brain's threat center is just firing blindly.
Just constantly alarming.
Exactly. All your cognitive energy is consumed by panic.
Mm.
But the moment you define the absolute worst and accept it, saying like, okay, I might lose my job and have to move in with my parents, you remove the unknown.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you give the fear a floor.
Yeah.
By hitting the bottom, you release all that energy that was tied up in vague panic, and your prefrontal cortex actually comes back online. You restore your power of concentration because you finally have solid ground to push off of.
Wow. So you aren't accepting defeat, you're just defining the battlefield.
Precisely. And there's this wild story about a man named Earl P. Haney that takes this concept to the absolute extreme.
Okay, lay it on me.
So he was diagnosed with incurable ulcers. His doctors told him his case was completely hopeless, advised him to get his affairs in order, and basically told him to go home and wait to die.
Oh my God. I mean, that is the ultimate worst case scenario.
It really is. And instead of waiting for the end in a state of terror, Haney makes a shocking decision. He decided he wanted to travel the world before he passed.
Which makes sense, right? Bucket list stuff.
Sure, but his doctors were appalled. They warned him that if he went on this trip, he would literally be buried at sea. So Haney bought a casket, brought it with him onto the world cruise, and made arrangements with the shipping company to have his body frozen if he died on the trip so he could be buried back home.
Wait. He packed his own coffin for a vacation?
He literally brought his own coffin on a cruise ship.
That is insane.
But he achieved the ultimate acceptance of death, right? He looked the absolute worst-case scenario in the face and said, fine, I accept it. And because he stopped fighting the inevitable, his anxiety completely vanished.
No.
He ate the local foods, he sang songs, he made friends, and he just enjoyed whatever time he had left.
Yeah.
And get this, because he eliminated the chronic stress that was destroying his stomach lining, he returned from the trip completely cured and 90 pounds heavier.
You are kidding me.
Nope. He sold the casket back to the undertaker and went right back to his life.
That is unbelievable. By fully leaning into the worst case scenario, he completely bypassed the stress that was actually killing him. So containing the emotion literally saved his life.
Exactly.
But okay, once we've used that formula to find solid ground and stop the emotional freefall, how do we process the actual complex problems staring us in the face? Because we can't just be zen all the time, right? We have to actually fix things.
Right, we have to shift from emotional containment to logical analysis. You see, the primary reason we worry about a problem is that we don't actually understand it. Dean Hawkes, he was the dean of Columbia College. He observed that half the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge.
Which we all do. We just guess.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
But you cannot make a decision in a vacuum of facts. Your brain will just fill that vacuum with terrifying assumptions. The very first step to solving a crisis is getting the facts.
Right.
And doing it impartially. Like as if you were gathering facts for a third party, not yourself.
Yeah, but that impartiality is really tough when you're in the hot seat, you know.
It is, which is why the method of how you gather those facts is critical. Consider the story of Galen Litchfield. Back in 1942, he was an American businessman trapped in Shanghai.
Oh, that's bad timing.
Very bad. He had defied the Japanese Gestapo by hiding a block of securities. Well, someone tipped them off, and he found out he was going to be thrown into the bridge house the very next morning.
The bridge house.
Yeah, which was their notorious torture chamber.
Oh my God. Okay, so that is a situation where sheer paralyzing panic is just the default human response.
Exactly. But Litchfield saved his own life by going straight to his typewriter.
His typewriter.
Yeah. He forced his terror through a mechanical process. He literally typed out two questions. What am I worrying about? And what can I do about it? He then wrote down his 4 possible options, along with the brutal consequences of each.
Wow. So for you listening today, you probably aren't dodging the Gestapo, but when you get that terrifying email from your boss on a Friday night saying, we need to talk Monday, opening a blank document and typing out your options serves the exact same purpose, right?
It really does.
It's like trying to do algebra while a bear is chasing you. The bear in your head is just this blur of teeth and claws. It feels completely insurmountable. But the secret seems to be the typewriter. The physical act of writing it down gets the bear out of your head and puts it into a cage on the paper.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. When you force your anxieties through the physical act of writing, you are establishing boundaries. You literally slow your brain down. You're forcing the emotional panicked part of your brain to hand control over to the logical sequential part.
That makes a lot of sense.
And a businessman named Leon Chimkin actually applied this exact logic to corporate culture. He cut his company's meeting times by 75% by creating a strict rule.
Oh, I need this rule. What was it?
Before any associate could present a problem to him, they had to submit a memo answering 4 questions. What is the problem? What is the cause? What are all the possible solutions? And what is your suggested solution?
Let me guess. They figured it out themselves.
Exactly. By the time people wrote the answers down, they usually didn't even need the meeting. Writing out the facts systematically destroys the ambiguity that feeds worry.
Okay, so logic and typewriters work great when we have a specific problem to solve, like a business crisis or an impending firing. But what about when we're just sitting around in our downtime on a Sunday afternoon and that vague dread creeps in? We have to look at how to break the actual habit of worry when there isn't a specific fire to put out.
Right. And the antidote to idle worry is action. It's based on a profound psychological law. The human mind simply cannot focus on 2 things at once. It's neurologically impossible.
Really, you can't multitask your feelings.
You really can't. There's a deeply moving story about a man named Marion J. Douglas. He was a father utterly paralyzed by the grief of losing 2 young daughters.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He was physically and mentally crushed by the weight of it, completely unable to function.
That is heavy. It's hard to imagine how any kind of productivity hack touches grief on that level.
Well, it wasn't a hack. It was really an accidental discovery. His 4-year-old son came to him one afternoon and begged him to build a toy boat. Douglas really didn't want to do it, but he forced himself to help his son. It took him 3 hours of focused work to build that little wooden boat.
Okay.
And he realized afterward that those 3 hours were the very first moments of mental peace he had experienced in months.
Wow. Just from building a toy.
Yes, because planning the design, measuring the wood, focusing on the tools it required his full cognitive capacity. Because his conscious mind was completely occupied with the boat, there was literally no bandwidth left over for his grief.
So the brain only has so much processing power. If you fill it with a complex task, the worry just gets pushed out of the queue. The sources for this deep dive actually mention that action is an anesthetic for sick nerves.
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and occupational therapy works on this exact principle. If you're busy, you don't have the space to worry. And if you aren't busy, your mind just starts inventing things to panic about just to fill the void.
Which brings up the law of averages. When our minds are idle, we inflate the probability of disaster. A businessman named Jim Grant cured his chronic stomach ulcers by finally looking at the actual statistics of his daily fears.
What was he so afraid of?
He shipped fruit in train cars, and he lived in constant, agonizing terror of train wrecks and bridge collapses destroying his product. But when he finally sat down and calculated his records, he saw the odds were 5,000 to 1 against his cars being destroyed.
Oh, wow. So not likely at all.
Exactly. By looking at the law of averages, he proved to himself that his idle worries were mathematically absurd.
And it's not just business logistics, right? It's the tiny, ridiculous, personal things we obsess over when we have too much time to think. Robert Moore's story really drives this home for me.
Oh, the submarine story.
Yes. So he was trapped in a submarine, 276 feet underwater for 15 hours, with enemy depth charges exploding all around him. He was absolutely convinced he was going to die. And in that extreme environment, what did he think about? He realized that all his past worries, like stressing over getting a promotion, worrying about a tiny scar on his forehead, fretting over buying a new car, they were completely absurd.
Yeah, you call them beetles eating away at his soul.
Right. It just sounds like worry thrives in a vacuum. It's exactly like a car engine running in neutral. If you don't put it in gear and give it some resistance, it just revs higher and higher until it burns itself out.
And think about the evolutionary biology of that engine. Our minds are driven by primeval energy. We evolved to face physical threats, to hunt, to build, to solve immediate problems in our environment.
Right. We're built for action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you take all that dynamic energy and you don't give it a constructive task, it doesn't just evaporate. It turns inward. It cannibalizes you. It turns into fear, despair, and, doom scrolling. Action puts the engine in gear. It gives that energy a place to go.
Okay, so staying busy cures idle dread. But what about the stuff we actively obsess over but can't change? The grudges, the annoyances, the toxic coworkers. We can't always just build a toy boat to distract ourselves. We need to figure out how to stop hemorrhaging mental energy on those things.
We do. We need to look at worry as a financial transaction and set an emotional budget. A man named Charles Roberts took a brilliant concept straight from Wall Street, the stop-loss order, and he applied it to his personal life.
A stop-loss order, how does that work?
Well, in stock trading, a stop-loss order automatically sells a stock if it drops to a certain price.
Right.
It instantly caps your financial loss so you don't ride it all the way to the bottom.
Right. Cut your losses.
Exactly. So Robert started setting stop-loss orders on his personal annoyances. If he was waiting for a friend who was notoriously late, his stop-loss was 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, he just left. He refused to pay a single minute more of his emotional capital on being annoyed.
That is so practical. I mean, think about how much emotional capital we spend on bad dates or internet arguments or resentments. We just keep paying and paying, but the cost of getting even, of holding those grudges, is literally the absolute worst investment you can make.
Because you hurt yourself far more than the other person. There's a great analogy in the research about a grizzly bear. A grizzly bear will let a skunk come along and steal its food because fighting the skunk simply doesn't pay.
Right.
Sure, the bear could crush the skunk in one swipe, but the resulting stink and misery just aren't worth the victory.
Man, some people really need to learn the skunk lesson.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Look at the famous Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy and his wife. They turned their home into a literal nightmare over 50 years of holding grudges.
50 years?
50 years. They kept spiteful diaries about each other for decades. They paid way too much for their whistle, which is referencing a story about a young Benjamin Franklin who overpaid for a toy whistle and regretted the financial waste for years. Tolstoy and his wife squandered their entire lives on resentment.
What a waste.
It really is.
Yeah.
The alternative is learning the art of cooperating with the inevitable. It's the difference between an oak tree that stubbornly resists a sleet storm and snaps under the weight of the ice, and an evergreen tree that simply bends with the ice and survives.
Okay, bending like the evergreen makes for a lovely metaphor, but I have to ask the practical question here. If I just accept that my landlord is unfairly jacking up my rent, or my colleague is taking credit for my work, am I cooperating with the inevitable, or am I just being a doormat? Like, how do you actually know the difference?
That is the essential boundary you have to define. You fight like hell as long as there is a chance to save a situation. If action can change the outcome, you act. You negotiate with the landlord, you speak up in the meeting. But, and this is the key, the moment common sense and facts dictate that a reality is unalterable, that the event has passed, or the decision is final and completely out of your control, you must stop what the sources call sawing sawdust.
Sawing sawdust.
Yeah, you can't saw a log that has already been sawed into dust. Resisting an unchangeable past just sets up massive inner conflict and physical tension. Cooperating with the inevitable actually releases that tension.
So once we stop trying to sawdust and we stop spending our emotional capital on grudges and skunks, we finally have a clean slate. We've freed up the mental RAM. So how do we proactively build a happy, resilient reality from there?
It begins with a seemingly backward psychological principle. Action dictates feeling.
Wait, backward?
Yeah, we usually assume the sequence goes one way, right?
Right.
We think we have to feel happy in order to act happy. But the pioneering psychologist William James formulated a rule that turns this completely on its head. He realized that while we can't instantly change our emotions just by willing them to change, we can directly control our physical actions.
Okay.
And because the body and mind are locked in this continuous feedback loop, by acting cheerful, by sitting up straight, taking a deep breath, forcing a smile, actual genuine cheerfulness inevitably follows.
Really? So forcing a smile actually tricks your nervous system?
Exactly. Yeah. It's called facial feedback. When you smile, your brain registers the muscle movement and assumes, oh, we must be happy. And it starts releasing the corresponding neurotransmitters. You can physically engineer a mood shift.
That's amazing.
It is. And part of that action is also consciously shifting your focus. Take Harold Abbott. He was a businessman who was feeling utterly defeated. He was walking to the bank to beg for a desperate loan just to save his company. He felt like his life was completely over.
Right.
But on the way, he saw a legless man rolling down the street on a wooden platform equipped with roller skate wheels. And as Abbott walked by, the man looked up and greeted him with his massive, spirited smile. In that singular moment, Abbott realized he was actually a rich man because he had his legs, his mobility, and his health.
Oh.
He consciously started counting his blessings instead of his troubles, and his entire demeanor changed before he even walked into the bank.
He wiped the mud off his perspective.
He really did.
Yeah.
And another critical part of re-engineering your reality is radical authenticity. There's this story about Cass Daly, an aspiring singer back in the 1930s. She was ruining her early performances because she was so self-conscious about her protruding buck teeth.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she would constantly try to pull her upper lip down to hide them while she sang. It looked terribly awkward, and she was just miserable. Finally, a veteran performer told her to just stop hiding.
Let me guess. It worked.
Oh, big time. She took the advice, opened her mouth, sang with total gusto, and turned that perceived flaw into a massive comedic asset that actually made her a famous star.
It's like we're all walking around wearing tinted glasses, you know? If the lenses are smeared with resentment or self-pity or the exhausting strain of trying to be someone else, the whole world looks dirty and threatening. But just forcing a smile to jumpstart your brain chemistry or toning your buck teeth is like taking those glasses off and wiping the lenses completely clean.
Because you don't attract what you want in life. You attract what you are. Our life is exactly what our thoughts make it. If you choose thoughts of courage, authenticity, and gratitude, you reshape your entire physiological and psychological experience.
Let's briefly recap this toolkit for you listening. We went from isolating your day into watertight compartments so you don't sink from overwhelm, to using the typewriter method to put the bear in a cage. We learned to put stop-loss orders on our personal annoyances so we don't go emotionally bankrupt, and realized that getting to work on a task is the ultimate anesthetic for vague anxiety.
All solid tools.
Yeah, but remember, this deep dive is utterly useless to you if it stays as just a fun theory in your headphones. You have to put the engine in gear. Pick one concept today. Maybe it's the 4 analytical questions for your next big decision, or maybe it's setting a 10-minute stop-loss order on your frustrations and actually apply it.
This raises an important question, though. We've spent this entire time exploring how to manage our own worry. But what about the next generation?
What do you mean?
Well, the research notes that gratitude and resilience are cultivated traits. They are not natural instincts. So if we are completely responsible for shaping our own reality through our thoughts and complaints, how might we be unintentionally programming the worry habits and anxieties of our own children through what they hear us stressing about at the dinner table?
Oh, wow. That's a profound thought.
Right. Are we teaching them to bend like the evergreen, or are we actively teaching them how to sawdust? Just something for you to mull over until next time.
So it's time to hit force quit on that glitchy app, draining your mental battery, install these new habits, and see just how smoothly your system can run.